new show of Observability Talk. We thank you for listening to this podcast during your peace time. When we started VuNet, we wanted to solve one of the very critical challenges of network security. Though we pivoted to observability, I have always been fascinated by the intersection of cybersecurity and observability. I believe our guest today will help us unravel it. We are glad to have Mr. Vinayak Godse, CEO of Data Security Council of India. But before I tell you about Vinayak, let me tell you about DSCI. DSCI is a non-profit body by NASSCOM. They promote data protection in India by establishing best practices and standards in cybersecurity and privacy. It engages with various stakeholders for policy advocacy, thought leadership, capacity building, and outreach activities to enhance the cybersecurity and privacy landscape. DSCI has also been instrumental in creating a very good startup ecosystem for cybersecurity startups. Vinayak has been associated with DSCI since its inception in 2008. He also leads the National Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity Technology and Entrepreneurship, a joint initiative of DSCI and VT. It suffices to say that Vinayak is a diligent voice in the cybersecurity space in India. Hi Vinayak, a warm welcome to you to Observability Talk podcast. My first question to you, Vinayak, is you have been quite active in cybersecurity world for more than 2 decades. How do you see the cybersecurity landscape transforming in India, and what are the primary drivers behind this transformation?
Yeah, thank you, Bharat, for having me here. Last 2 decades, right? Cybersecurity was a kind of a greenfield when I started my career in cybersecurity, but now it's like more like a brownfield. But while we say that brownfield, so if you look at overall digitization that is happened in country and happening or probably accelerating in the country, so largely we talk about as a 4 thing in DSCI, right? So when it comes to digitization, one is every industrial sector is now digitizing. There is a push, internal plus external government push for them to digitize it, basically, right? Second, the kind of a intervention that we brought, and that's we call as a digital public infrastructure, right? Starting with Aadhaar and then UPI. So there's been tremendous amount of revolutions happening in the case of at least the 2 types of organization we always talk about. One is the transaction processing industry, and other is the value creating industry, like energy company, manufacturing companies. So the UPI ecosystem or the Aadhaar ecosystem, or largely the digital public infrastructure, had transformed the entire financial transaction processing industry quite intensely. And now we see that it will happen for the other sectors of industry as well. Right? That's the second thing from the digitization perspective. Third is the emerging technology we are adopting. And fourth is a very sensitive sector like defense and other critical sectors also going for technology advancement and digitization quite intensely, basically. Right? And the last one is the individual's transaction, be it a personal transaction, their transaction, social exchanges that they have, and their financial transaction as well is also getting digitized quite intensely, basically. In the process, the digital footprint of each of these entity plus individuals are getting quite expanded, and those can be picked up by an attacker or by a fraudster, basically, to see a possibility. Like, for example, even there is one weakness, vulnerability is exposed for short moment. There's a possibility somebody pick up and exploit that, basically. So we are into that paradigm now, that a small weakness exposed for a moment can create a lot of big ramification for you.
Very true, sir. I mean, the kind of fast pace of innovation and this spike in digital adoption which you are talking about has also increased fraud, suspicious transactions, and so on, right? We have been hearing from general public, right, that they basically are getting into frauds, and whenever they are making transaction, different type of QR codes and so on. And financial institutions and other large enterprises, right, are also grappling with this security challenges because of this digital revolution and transformation.
Yeah.
What has been happening in India, right? What are the top 3 challenges do you see some of these large enterprise companies, CISOs or CIOs, are always awake in night. What are these top three challenges which are keeping them awake at night?
Yeah, so we are seeing the significant advancement of a threat landscape, right? And as I talked about, like for a short moment or for a moment, even the weakness and vulnerability get exposed, there is a possibility that it will get exploited, basically. The small exposure would create a larger exposure, and larger exposures probably will create larger ramifications. This is happening at one hand, right?
Right.
On the other hand, the volume and velocity at which they are putting digitization, developing application and then deploying them is also significantly rising, right? And the underlying infrastructure is also significantly becoming more and more complex in nature. And there are a lot of interdependencies that worked on, right? And the entire supply chain of transaction processing industry is getting so unbundled. So one party is managing their infrastructure, managing the applications, and against this kind of advancing threat landscape. But other parties, how do we make sure that this entire external ecosystem, because of unbundling happening in transaction processing industry, how do we make sure that all of them are bringing capabilities, but at the same time there's a security and privacy nowadays assurance is also ensured in that process. Basically, this is one of the key things that we believe, which is big challenge, and CISOs and CIOs are grappling with the challenge, basically, right? How do you make sure that organization is growing fast, organization is adopting technology better, and they are digitizing and creating those possibilities, improving the productivity, and also providing better experience to customer, while taking care of the scale at which the attack landscape and advancement at which they are trying to bring to the table, addressing them. So how do we balance these two is a big challenge for the sector that we talk about.
Very true, sir. One of the things what we have been saying, two things which you talked about, right? That almost every enterprise are using interconnected, are getting interconnected with other enterprises, right? Because they are using APIs more now. The second thing is almost anything and everything is looking at citizen scale, right? In such an environment, how do you see these enterprises and institutions adopting any new security practices to address these challenges? Are there any framework which has come up? Do you?
So we nowadays look at there were days of security, and we all come from. I mean, as a security professional, I can admit here we all came from security means assessment, means assurance. Right? But that is like we used to do that once in a year, once in a 6 month. Nowadays, that's down to once in a quarter, right? But within a quarter, every day, almost 50 to 60 vulnerability get exposed, right? Disclosed, basically, right? And you don't know whether you are exposed or you are vulnerable to those disclosures that happen, right? So what that tells us is like this assurance and assessment driven security is not going to work now. It was until now, right? But now the focus is more like how do you manage that real time? How do you manage security problem on a real time basis, basically? So how do you get hold of the things that could create larger ramification for you in a shortest possible time? And do you know what are your behaviors, basically, right? And out of that, is there any abnormal behavior? And can you get hold of that, basically, right? And once you one problem is solving that, right? One problem is make sure that you get hold of that. And other is once you know that, do you have those tools and handles with you and instruments with you, basically? So take care of that. So do you have the enforcement mechanisms with you? And enforcement could be anything. So the security has come to this level where getting hold of the issues that could create ramification as early as possible in this complex environment, and at the same time orchestrating action in a way that you are enforcing so that it is not creating ramification for you. And henceforth, I mean, this is still now, right? And henceforth, we are looking at no matter how much you are prepared, there is still some issue will happen, right? There's still some breaches that you will be exposed to, right? How do you make sure that your resiliency preparation is more systematic in nature, right? How do you make sure that you are ready to address those eventuality with all those instruments available with you?
Right. See, this is something which I have been telling a lot of our customers that observability is always an afterthought. And a lot of times early on, we have seen security also is an afterthought. Are you seeing any changes in the industry today? Are people...
now certainly, like, in fact, one part which carefully we look at security was largely some years back was a point solution, a problem, and we are finding solution for that, right? And gradually, like we had this network operations center, we started putting security operations center basically, which is at least trying to create a single plane view of our organization, what is happening in the organization by looking at all those log information, event information, try to bring it together and trying to make sense of it basically. It has approach to that level basically, right? And now because of the security operations center, and there are different models to set that up basically, at least uh, one first level of observing what is happening has achieved, right? But now observability, as we talked about uh, this interdependency, we talk about this complexity, we talked about this scale and value matrix things are going basically, the transaction, the way they're getting processed. So now this needs to be going, and then there's a lot of these external interdependencies as well. So now we need to make sure that we have to go the next level, right? In terms of knowing things from the larger, bigger context perspective, and also knowing things from what you have in the organization, right? So quite a good internal intelligence in conjunction with what you learn, and this learning is on the longer duration of time, basically, because we are seeing in security, especially the APT attack that we talk about, advanced person mistake that we talk about. Sometimes that is there in the organization for 200 days plus, and then only they will be there for a long. So this is a very stealthier in nature basically, and then you take time to know their activity, right? And they will be there in the system. That's why longer duration observation is very important, and that's why I believe the observability science, the way it is evolving, could play very critical important role in cybersecurity field.
Very true, sir. Uh, you talked about NOC, you talked about SOC, and mostly in most of the enterprises, we have seen that these two work in silos, right?
Yeah.
When people generally keep both of them to make sure that they have good view in the overall infrastructure and application operations, and then what is happening from the security perspective. Uh, in certain customer discussions, we have been asked or we have been told multiple times that should these two somewhere in some point converge, right? And maybe provide a single unified view, because finally it's an application which is being monitored or observed, right? And I would want to have a view which provides me both operation perspective as well as security perspective. So, do you see in your conversation to CIOs, CISOs, if they are looking at somewhere conversing these two?
Yeah. So silos had already discussed in the circle that we engage, right? CISO, CIO, CTO, CDO nowadays, right? Um, and those silos, because why these silos are critical in the discussion, because the security attack of fraud possibilities, right, are largely multi-stage in nature. They also involve multi-vectors as well, and that vector could be at a network, could be at a data, could be at application, right? And sometimes by knowing only network, you're not able to understand how things are going wrong, basically. That can converge, or that can be understood from the what is happening at data, what is happening at application, what is happening at a particular security solution they're looking at. If we put all that together, then only you will able to make sense of thing, right? And this is a felt need basically, right? I mean, we set up security operations center, but the coverage nowadays, people talk largely, is it covering the entire infrastructure for me? But regulators are also trying to see if sometimes application logs are not really integrated with the SOC, and is there a way for us to bring that together? Because at the end of the day, applications are your external interface. Something happening at application level, if that can be correlated what is happening at network level, what is happening at, for example, we have built quite a good solutions at a data level as well. So that people are now looking at database activity monitoring. Some we picked up from that basically. So all of these solutions, they do one important thing. So they take enforcement action, but every enforcement action creates a new intelligence as well. If all of this intelligence can be converged together, that would probably build quite a good possibility of identifying uh, that one unknown thing which could create a big problem for you, right?
No, sir, very true. In fact, we were analyzing which basically came in light, right, few months back. And we realized that if there could have been an anomaly detection, right, on failures, on these transaction failures, uh, most probably some indication would have come, which would have told that there are failures happening, which was not there earlier, right? Or the amount of failures happening in shorter period.
Yeah.
Some of
Yeah.
those anomalies could have been picked up, and maybe somebody would have looked at it, saying that yes, there is some issue with respect to the application there. Very true, sir. Sir, you talked about the regulatory part of it. Uh, Sometime back, DSCI has mapped various companies into different categories, and thanks to you and DSCI, VuNet was mapped under supervisory technologies, right? Can you explain a bit about overall what your thought process are on the supervisory technology and how important it is for regulatory bodies and so on, right? And what do you see coming out in future?
Yeah. So I think if you talk in the context of the enterprises, we always talk about uh, something which is helping them to comply is RegTech, regulatory technology. But RegTech is more enterprise centric in nature, where you are helping uh, to comply better through automated capabilities that you build together, basically, right? But Data Security Council of India works at aggregate level. So we have members all across industry vertical. We work with national security, machinery of the country. We engage on a lot of those aggregate level work that happen in country, especially in the context of security and privacy, right? Uh, what we see that most of the risk, be it a cybersecurity or systematic financial risk as well, right? Most of risks require you to take this to aggregate level. Means it's not only what is happening in one bank or one organization. It's happening all across the bank, right? One part is that, basically, right? And there could be some signals in one bank which could be correlated with other bank, right? And that will make sense for us to understand how systematically things could go wrong and what exactly is happening. So learning about those possible future problem could require you to think about uh, correcting or probably bringing these two contexts together and try to make sense out of it. So that's the aggregate level talk, right? Second part is like, if you have to observe, so there are ways, right? So, for example, until now, regulators had been largely there's a standards and expectations and requirements, and they would probably ask. There are two ways for achieving those compliance. One is they will seek the information. Some nowadays in security, they are also asking them to report any breach or any weaknesses that organization are facing, especially the breaches or incident. Basically, that's another thing. And third is they would go on audit, but audit would happen once in a year or once in a 6 months, basically, right? But in between that period, in between the 6 months or 1 year, a lot of things would have happened in the organization, basically, right? So then regulators' ability to know how a particular regulated entity is performing with a stated objective, and that could be cybersecurity, but it could be financial, systematic risk perspective, for that matter, many other social. I mean, nowadays we talk about ESG as well, environmental, social, and governance perspective as well, right? So all of these dimensions. So these are dimensions of observing or dimensions of knowing the performance of the individual entities, maybe regulated entities or supervised entities, basically, right? And knowing their performance, and then because all of them are contributing to larger digital economy goal, right? Larger goal of the country, right? And we had seen, like, in an interconnected world, right? Some risk it is some at some company, especially even it is in your country or other parts of the globe, could close because the entire ecosystem, financial, especially in internet ecosystem, technology ecosystem, is so interconnected. One problem could create larger global catastrophe as well, right? It could be very specific to a sector, could be national economy, and could be international economy as well. The financial crisis of 2008 tells us how that has brought the recession to the world, right? And that's why I think if you are able take this observability or such kind of capability at aggregate level and try to make sense of the sector, make sense of the uh, financial BFSI sector, one is the bank and then other finance sector, make sense of overall sectors together, make sense of the economy together, and even make sense of the global interconnect system together. Then probably ability of a supervisor will quite significantly improve in terms of um, taking those early stages. Because in financial crisis of 2008, there's some people who are talking about this could happen, but there were not evidences that you could see those evidences in different spread on across the organization. Basically. So now things are going in a way that can supervisor leverage this capability and create those kind of competence and capability to know things which could create a systematic risk to a sector, to economy, or to international economy as well.
This is very interesting, sir. This is very, very interesting because that would be the right use of technology, what has been built, right, from both security and observability perspective. Um, this is very interesting. Uh, just moving towards the security side of thing, right? That when we talk about security, it has so many different parts or use cases, right? It starts from endpoint security, server security, application security, vulnerability, security in terms of transactions, digital transactions, and so on, right? Uh, we see that some of the OEMs are trying to bring in observability with application vulnerability together to give a sort of unified view. We are also working with some of the customers where we are bringing in uh, security from digital transaction perspective, right? We are also working with certain customers who have been asking us to do sort of integration with SIEM, SIEM solution, because we also receive logs, which has a lot of business context data from the transactions, right? And they are always looking for this information in more real time basis, right? Uh, Similarly, there are FRM systems which we discussed, right? That fraud and risk management, which are in line of the transaction, but they still need some more business context. Even if the transaction has been successful, but you still want to flag that okay, this transaction might have been a fraud, right? With all this in mind, what type of use cases do you see from security perspective, which will benefit the enterprises when we are trying to combine these two technologies, observability and cybersecurity?
Yeah. So I think these are important. Right? So in our total encapsulate of security technology thinking that we have in DSCI, right? So we believe that you need enforcement side. You need enforcement at application level, data level, network level, cloud. Then you need messaging level like email for that matter, right? So there are points where you need to take those security decisions and you need to take those enforcement action basically, right? But in the context of this multi-stage, multi-vector, and the volume at which the scale and advancement at which the threat actor that we see, right? So you can't take decision at the data in a silo, right? So you need to have those kind of intelligence available to you, and that's what I talk in my security technology thinking encapsulate that the language of control is now changing. That earlier we used to talk about control when we talk about security. So there are controls available. So that is changing largely from control to intelligence driven action. Each of the security decision now needs to factor those intelligence, needs to process those intelligence basically, right? And when I say that means there are a lot of history, right? And there is a lot of current thing which is happening. So you need to understand historical behavior, and that needs to be compared with what is happening now. So until now, each of the solution has now, over the period of time, they started, and there are 600 different type of technology when it comes to security. Right? Each of
Right.
them, each type of technology, I'm not talking about product, I'm talking about type of technology. Each type of technology is now improved in terms of consuming that intelligence and enriching their decision making. So in the security technology discussion, we always talk about if the decisions are not enriched, there is no logical understanding behind the decision. There is no proper reasoning that you have given to take that decision, then that decision will likely to create a problem. And the decision doesn't have the downstream and upstream context, basically. You would find a lot of challenges with the decision. Either it will lead to false negative, false positive, right? And then it will create some other, while solving one problem, it will create another problem, basically. In fact, now generally everyone tells us that, right? There are so much of those tokens needs to be processed now to give answer to a particular small or single English line that you are putting to general AI capabilities. Same thing is in security as well. Right? So now I'm seeing that it has reached to some level, but observability would bring larger, bigger context. Taking actions at network, you need a context of application, you need a context of network, you need a context of the messaging. So all of those contexts can be brought and can be looked at in terms of taking the decisions of, for example, at a data level, basically. Data security itself, I'm just telling one as an example. We have almost 6-7 different types of technology. Data discovery, data prevention, digital risk management, and data access, data access governance, data activity monitoring. Then there are solutions which talks about data security platforms. All of these 6-7 solutions are taking those enforcement actions, right? And they need to enrich. That's one part of it. Second part is once they take an enforcement action, they provide some data out of it. They provide some intelligence out of it. Some other side of solution can consume that data. And then the infrastructure perspective, then overall fundamental perspective, all that come together. And this is a very big kind of a data science, machine learning, AI operations, and now generative AI is enriching that quite intensely.
Yeah, so thank you so much, sir. This makes very, very lot of sense, right? In terms of where we can see some sort of convergence happening with observability and the context which it breaks in and the cybersecurity side of things. You just touched upon the AI, ML, and GenAI. See, GenAI has been around for over a year or two, right? You are already working with so many cybersecurity startups as part of DSCI product outreach, right? Do you see any any specific use cases somebody is working on with GenAI or the cybersecurity or on observability or on the convergence of the two, which you can just talk about?
Yeah, so in fact, Data Security Council of India, we have set up a GenAI use case kind of a laboratory for various different larger purposes that we support and also look at cybersecurity, what is happening, right? And we are seeing quite interesting experiments and a lot of startups that we, as you know, that we nurture in cybersecurity space, and we are seeing how those startups are basically leveraging this capability. Right? Most of our AI projects until now, even in cybersecurity side, had always been with a limited context, right? With organization data, and they will process it and they will try to find it, basically. But security, as we have seen in interconnected ecosystem, at the business level interconnection happening, at system level as well, a lot of interconnections are happening, basically, right? So without global understanding and proper reasoning, it will be difficult for you to take a very the decision that you are confident of, basically, right? So GenAI is adding a lot of those things, and more important contribution of GenAI is it is helping. One important part is it is bringing those information accessible, right? It is bringing those information which matters for security accessible, right? It is also bringing interactivity as well, right? As for example, decision needs to be explained, right? And decision needs to be so you can ask question and it will give answer. Okay, why a particular decision has been taken, right? So the explanatory brings to the table, basically, right? It can, one of the important thing is it can help you summarize things better. So we always have to struggle to summarize the thing and tell to board or a CEO, okay, what exactly we are talking about. So GenAI especially is helping you to summarize it better. And the moment there's a question, why you are saying this, it can immediately go down to that small nuances. So one is summarization, other is it can also help you to go to decompose level and tell you why you are saying this and that's why this summarized to this. Right? But now we are also saying that from now, this is what we are achieving to GenAI, and this is how GenAI is contributing to security technology thinking. But many things which would probably require for security and GenAI probably offer this capability, and observability GenAI could really play a very important role. Is the hence for the uh, things would be a complex goal that needs to be achieved, and security is, when we talk about orchestration, is one of the important thing, right? Orchestration is so many small nuances that needs to be taken care of in a way that they all synthesize together to take that particular action, right? And this is orchestration of so many different things, right? This is a complex goal that you need to achieve. And that complex goal, if you have to automate it, then for each of that small task that you are executing basically, right? And all that together provides you a benefit at a larger level. You need to you need to have this entire context of the organization available for each of the small nuances. Also at an aggregate level, it's all those matters will get processed and then you are orchestrating. So at a orchestrated level as well, you know how the intelligence and then it will help you to explain better, go to the commerce level. So this has a very important critical play in terms of how security will behave from now. And increasingly, because of this capability of observability and GenAI now increasingly there will be more trust on this way of doing security rather than an individual making judgment about security.
Very true, sir. The trust is something which we were calling it as a new digital currency for enterprises who are uh, basically servicing their customer through digital channels.
And
Right?
the trust, which is reason, trust that can be explained, trust that can be summarized better, can be decomposed better. So trust, if you can do that, then I believe people would start believing on this way. So one of the key part we talk about in security is a quantification of risk, and that computational element, right, would be very important from the taking decisions of investment or lower investment or higher investment.
Very true, sir. 2 points which basically you talked about, which we are also doing certain beta trials now on GenAI, is explainability. Like, how do I explain this so much of complex, interconnected health and performance data which we are receiving? How do we explain this to our end customer? And second is recommendability. So there is a problem which has happened, right? Now, what sort of recommendations we can provide to our user where they can go ahead and find the resolution, go ahead and find ways and means or steps to resolve a given problem. So these are the two main use cases we are also looking at from GenAI perspective.
Yeah, and then that is and one of the important thing nowadays will be mattering is, so there's something called as a automated reasoning, right? And the reasoning requires at a various different level, right? At a board, for example, if you look at the regulators requirement, right, means I sometimes may to be really empathize with the board members nowadays, because one hand they are required to have very nuanced understanding of the threats that are impacting the organization. Other hand, they have to also approve the strategy, IT security or IT strategy of the organization. The canvas for board's attention, right, is expanding and also getting more deeper in the nature, right? How do you achieve that, right? Means you are talking about depth, you are talking about breadth, and you're also talking about overall strategic kind of thing, right? So you need to explain it at a different level, and that explanation can't be a judgmental, right? It has to be a reasoned explanation, basically, right? And I think and observability is very interesting in this because GenAI is generating those results, basically, those explanations, basically, those descriptions, basically, right? And And when GenAI is largely global, planetary level processing of data is happening basically, right? And if there are ways for you to augment that generation with what you have in the organization,
Right.
then that generation would be that augmented generation from the context that you bring from the organization would sense create quite a good sense. At any point in time, you can defend. One part is defend, right? Defend the decision that you have taken, defend the particular approach that you followed. Another part is also demonstrate the compliance is better. So there is a demonstrability in comes to compliance, basically.
Very true. Very true. See, one of the other thing what we have also realized, interestingly, as you said, right, that explainability could be at different levels.
Yeah.
Could start from the board to the CIO, to the ID head, to the L1, L2, L3 folks, to the SRE. So different ways, how much of technical know-how you need to bring in that, to how much of business part you need to bring in that explainability.
And then
right?
we in the language skill, right? We talk about two type of the skill. One is the complexity browsing, right? And which is very important to have critical thinking. So critical thinking is a very different nuances, attributes, attentions, dimensions, interdependencies that you need to understand, right? And you need to process that. And for that, you need to have complexity browsing, basically, right? You should be able to browse the complexity better, right? And then when you have those capabilities, then whatever you decide, whatever approach that you follow, basically, will be more reason, basically. So if I really talk in terms of fundamentals of how things has evolved, right? There is a very interesting book of Thinking Fast and Slow of David Kahneman, right? So what he talks about, there are system 2 thinking, system 1 thinking. System 1 thing is very intuitive in nature, right? Maybe per se we decide on something, right? More intuitive and may not very reason, basically. System 2 thinking is more deliberate, more computational, more reason, basically. It processes a lot of interest, so it can be fair as well. It can be very empathetic as well, basically. So, but for that, you need time, right? You need time to process all of these things and compute all of these things, basically, right? And then if you empower your system 1 thinking, intuitive thinking with this, but there was always these two different thinking. A particular moment you have to respond now, and you respond with whatever intuition that comes to your mind, basically. But same response, if you compute well, analyze well, browse it well, basically, right? Then the intuitive decisions could be very well. But now with observability, you give all of those perspective contexts, and with GenAI, you can process that in the shortest possible time. So your system 1 thinking, intuitive thinking, can be significantly enhanced with these kind of abilities.
This is very, very well put, sir. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you something about DSCI. As part of DSCI, you run a lot of initiatives, right? And I was really very impressed when I visited your office last year. And Teja also showed me hardware security lab and GenAI lab and other labs which you basically are building up internally. Can you share some of the exciting initiatives which you are running currently and how?
So apart from our contribution to national cybersecurity policy strategy, right? And we also work with the user industry of the country, most of the banks, most of the energy company, most of the power sector organization, health sector, manufacturing company nowadays, right? And airport infrastructure and so many such kind of industry, right? And that helps us to understand how things are working in the user industry. We understand public policy and strategy better because we work with government. And third important, we also engage with the provider until now services, but last 10 years of time, we have been also focusing our attention to the product companies, security product company.
Right.
And when we started looking at these 10, 12 years back, there were only a handful of companies, but we are seeing now almost 350 plus product companies in India in cybersecurity space, right? And they're solving problems at various levels, right? Somebody is building dams, somebody is building advanced malware detection, somebody is trying to solve a hardware security level problem, somebody is building application security kind of a capability, somebody is setting up the security operations capability, right? At various different levels, the companies are working basically, right? And and then since 2019, where Government of India, Ministry of Information IT had supported us to set up this national effort for security, cybersecurity research and entrepreneurship, basically. Because we also believe that a lot of interesting research work happening in academic world and research institutions level. So we try to closely look at that and try to see whether some of that can be productized as well. And some of the industry use cases can be going to the researcher, because security is such a deep technology domain. In deep tech is complex and security is more complex part of our deep tech, basically. It requires research intervention, basically. So we try to bring researcher community closer to security innovators, basically, and then aid this all to help our some of the work that we do with the user industry. They try to look at future of security, what is going to happen in 3 years down the line. So we also try to focus our attention to the future, how things will be evolving in the future, basically. We also work with the security, defense agencies on a strategic critical technologies, basically. So we have a specific initiative again supported by government, and we have set up a even portal to have very nuanced understanding of country's capability in 27 different technology areas. It's not only cybersecurity. We look at AI, we look at IoT, look at robotics, look at AR, VR, look at quantum, look at all of these things. So all of these things together, that we try to add a lot of bottom-up understanding. We understand aggregate level. We try to understand in a way that we have bottom-up and top-down understanding to the table.
No, this is fantastic, sir. I mean, I have seen the impact of the work DSCI and you and team has been doing on ground, right? Thank you so much for your time, Vinayak, sir. Really appreciate it. Very engaging conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bharat.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Vinayak today. You can learn more about him and DSCI at www.dsci.in. If you like today's episode, please share it with others who would like to listen to Observability Talk. For more information about VuNet systems, please log into www.vunetsystems.com.